Hey there guys, welcome back. I was going to be making a video, originally planning on making a video about touching on NASA's telemetry, or the lost telemetry data that's constantly brought up. On my YouTube channel, there's been a lot of moon landing deniers jump in, wanting to pick fights with certain things, and the lost telemetry is something that keeps getting brought up. So I thought, hey, let's pick that apart, talk about it as much as I can, try to flush out as much fact and information to, I guess, dispute anything that they bring up, or any issues that they have, or any confusion. Well, after doing some research, typing up the script, it slowly started turning into something else. Mainly that I started realizing that a lot of these people don't even realize that there were multiple moon missions, not just one. The Apollo program did not consist of just one single moonshot out of nowhere, and then that was it, and it's done. There were multiple missions. So that's what this video eventually turned into. Apollo 11 was just the first moon landing that happened. Certain people want to jump to the front and scream, oh, they lost the telemetry tapes, we can't go back. Well, they went back multiple times, and some of them weren't even to actually land. Some were just to orbit the moon. The ones that did land were Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. And those weren't even the total number of missions, again, that went into lunar orbit. Apollo 8, 10, 13, and 14 went into lunar orbit, but didn't land due to either it just being a test orbit, or they ran into certain issues with equipment that prevented them from landing. Such, similar to Apollo 13. But yeah, Apollo wasn't just a single shotgun mission that happened. There was a massive buildup, a massive backing from the federal government that spanned 9 years of development with lots and lots of money. The whole program pretty much started in 1960. In 1958, NASA's budget was just 0.1% of the federal budget. In 1959, it made a slight jump to 0.2% of the federal budget. The year leading up to President Kennedy's speech about the U.S.'s goal going to the moon, NASA saw a pretty good jump from 0.2% up to 0.5% of the federal budget. By 1965, just 4 years prior to the first moon landing with Apollo 11, NASA's budget increased to 4.41% of the federal budget. By today's standard, that would equal $270 billion. What was NASA's budget for 2022? $24 billion. Yeah, just 1/11th of what it was during the peak of the Apollo era. 1/11th. Long story short, the Apollo program wasn't just a little side project. Again, it was a massive, massive federal undertaking from the federal government, multiple agencies. It was a big deal. If people are wondering why NASA's current moon endeavor is taking so long, that's part of it, the budget. In 2023, NASA saw an increase of just $1.4 billion to their budget. And for 2024, NASA is expecting to see a $27.2 billion budget. That's still one-tenth of what the budget was for NASA in 1965. For those who say that NASA is over-budgeted and that the money could be used for better things, let's take a look at something else to put things into comparison and see if that's really the case. NASA's budget for 2023 was $25.4 billion. What was the Defense Department's budget for 2023? $797 billion. $797 billion. That's enough to fund NASA's budget 31 times over. If your arguing point is that money's the issue, you're looking in the wrong place. On the Saturn V wasn't even NASA's first rocket for the Apollo missions. NASA first tested the Saturn I, which would later evolve into the Saturn V. The Saturn I consisted of 10 different test launches, with the first orbital launch happening January 29, 1964. After the Saturn I launches, NASA then reconfigured the Saturn I into the Saturn 1B configuration and made an additional 4 more test launches. I think the first one was February 26, 1966. So yeah, there was way more to it than just one lucky moon landing. Multiple rocket tests leading up to it, multiple revisions of the rocket, multiple orbits around the moon for testing, then eventually they had a landing, and then multiple landings once they realized things worked out. The famous movie Apollo 13 kind of gives you insight into one of the reasons why one of the landings didn't happen. Many are also unaware that just this last year, Artemis 1, NASA's latest SLS rocket, successfully completed an orbit around the moon and successfully returned to Earth. Yeah, so that happened. Most people don't even know that that much progress has already taken place. So reassess yourself, stay up to date especially if you're going to be trying to argue these things against other people online. At least try to stay up to date with what's happening and what has happened. Knowledge is power. If you're going to be debating people online about certain things, especially with science, try to know what has happened. It helps your argument out tremendously. That's all.